here on the Intracoastal waterway side, here on the Gulf of Mexico. And the issue has been around for a long time. We received a lot of complaints, so we decided to address this to get it out to the public as we begin this initiative that I'll explain here in Dunedin, because they've had a problem with this one vessel that's been here for a period of time, and the commissioner and the mayor will talk about it. And the three issues, though, that we're primarily dealing with, that we receive just a tremendous amount of citizen complaints about, are what are called derelict vessels. The other issue is what people refer to as liveaboards, where people are living aboard boats. And then the third are mooring fields. And the first thing I want to talk about, which is what we're addressing here today, are these derelict vessels. We've identified up and down the Intracoastal waterway and in Tampa Bay 34 vessels that fit the definition of being derelict. They've just been abandoned irresponsibly by their owners, left there, and some have been sitting out here now for a year and a half. And the greatest concern that we all have about these vessels is that they're a danger to the public, they're a danger to boaters, danger to people that are on personal watercraft, and a danger to swimmers. And besides that, they're also an eyesore. And just have these vessels sitting out there is something that we've been needing to deal with for a while. We now have the right legal framework that we can address it. So as we are required to do, there's a couple of ways to go about this. And what we began now probably about close to a month ago, is to establish a hearing process, an administrative hearing process. And once we did that, then we could post a notice on all of these vessels, and we posted it for 21 days. In that 21-day period, the owners can request a hearing. If they don't request a hearing, then we can remove and destroy the vessels. So that 21-day period for the majority of the vessels expired last week. Today, with a contractor that we're using, we're going to begin snatching these derelict vessels out of the water. You can see it here today as they take this one that's behind me out, and they'll load it onto the truck, and they'll be destroyed. And we're going to begin that process today, but take it throughout the week and throughout the county and get as many of these out of the water as we possibly can. Again, it's better for the safety of the boating public, and again, it's an eyesore for the community and to address the citizen concerns that we've had. The second issue I want to talk about is liveaboards. And there are a lot of people that are living on boats up and down, especially the Intracoastal waterway. And Florida law defines an impermissible, a prohibited liveaboard. So somebody just living on a boat isn't illegal. Is that where it becomes a prohibited liveaboard is if somebody is living on a boat, but it doesn't have any navigable propulsion. So if somebody is on a boat and the boat doesn't have a motor, then that is illegal, that is prohibited, and you can't live on that boat. The problem is, and this is as much talking about today, what we're going to do about the ones that are prohibited is educating the public, hopefully, on what is not prohibited. And people call a lot and talk about that they live on the Intracoastal waterway and there's 2 or 3 boats behind their house and somebody's living on them. It's legal, and that is something that if people have concern about, it should be addressed through the legislature and through changing the laws. But it doesn't matter what the boat looks like, doesn't matter what color it is, doesn't matter how big it is, doesn't matter how small it is. If somebody's living on it and it can meet a navigable propulsion test that will be administered to them through an investigative process, then there's nothing we can do about it. Now, if the boat doesn't meet that test, and if you have somebody that's got a 30-foot boat and they've got a little 5-horsepower trolling motor that they bought at Walmart or someplace, and they think, oh, I got a motor, so it's got propulsion. Well, that's not the key, is that it has to be navigable propulsion. That means that it has to be able to navigate the waterways with that type of propulsion that it is. So you can't just have a mast and say, oh, well, I got a mast. No, it's got to have a sail, and you actually be able to navigate the waters with it. And if people are violating that, then we're going to get through a very intensive process that we're going to use, and through a dedicated effort here is that we're going to be administering these tests to these vessels. And if they pass, fine. But if they don't, then we're going to start citing people. And there's a process that we can go by there as well where we can eventually get those boats moved on. So that's in dealing with the liveaboards. The third issue that we got a lot of complaints about are what people are referring to as mooring fields. So off the coast here, down in Bay Pines, down in Madeira Beach, down in St. Pete Beach, or a whole bunch of places up and down the Intracoastal waterway especially, is that if you have a whole bunch of boats, let's say 5 or 6 boats down there in Treasure Island, and they all group up and they all throw an anchor, That's not a mooring field. A mooring field is when somebody sinks something at the bottom and it's with concrete and rebar, etc. And then there's a buoy that pops up and somebody comes on and clips onto the buoy. Well, it's illegal, it's a crime, it's a misdemeanor to place an illegal mooring field, and it's also illegal and it's a crime to attach to an illegal mooring field. So when it's an illegal mooring field, then we're going to cite the people who dropped it and cite the people who moored to it, and we're going to have that mooring field removed. They have to be permitted, etc., and there's a process to go through the state to have that done. But people have to understand that when they call us and they're concerned because there's 4 or 5 boats, but they've dropped an anchor, that's not a mooring field. So we want to be very aware of, sensitive to, and responsive to what innumerable citizens have brought to our attention and to the commissioners' attentions across the board. And we're going to do everything we can to address the concerns within the law. But of course, we have to operate within the law. So again, we're going to see here today, you'll see it here in a few minutes. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Peters and then to Mayor Bujalski and Commissioner Torga, and then anybody will take any questions you have. But beginning moving forward, we're going to clean this mess up, and we're not going to let it get back to where it is, and there's going to be a big difference, and the citizens will see that. But again, it has to be within these parameters in which we can work. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have after the commissioners and the mayor speak, and we'll address those concerns or any questions you have. So I'll turn it over to Commissioner Peters.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Sheriff. It's great to be here, and I love to see the turnout. Thank you. It's a really important issue, and before I get started on my comments, I want to thank Representative Linda Cheney. She helped us with Fish and Wildlife to come up with an alternative solution on how we process a derelict boat to get them out of the water. And the 21 days is critical for several reasons, not only to give them notice, but to make sure that we can get any kind of contaminants that are dangerous to the environment, so we can get the fuel out of there, the oil out of there, so the county can go in and clean up any hazard that might be leaching into the water. And to be able to get these boats out of the water in less than a month's time is so critical to our environment, not just the eyesore, but really to our environment. So we're not leaching the oil and the gasoline and the other things that are on board that are hazardous to the waterway and our quality of water. So I don't want to take up any more time. I'm very excited. This is a really big day for me because we've been listening to complaints for a very, very, very long time. I know people do get concerned about when you've got 20 boats in one area that it really does look like a mooring field, and people are concerned about how they release their waste, and so that's something as we go in the future, how we're going to manage those boats too that'll park for 6 months because there's a Publix across the street. But how are they disposing of their waste? Are they disposing it properly, and how do we manage that and check that? So I'm really excited to be working with the sheriff. This is a really big day for us. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming out today. We are equally as excited. You can ask any Dunedin resident that this boat's been out here for probably 1.5 to 2 years. We get regular emails and phone calls about it. I'm so excited that both Commissioner Peters and Sheriff Gualtieri took the time to try to find a new process to move these things more quickly, because residents generally don't understand why it has to sit there for 1.5 years. But here's an interesting way to look at it. For us, the Intracoastal is a roadway. It's just a water roadway. And so you wouldn't leave an abandoned car on Alt 19, and you shouldn't leave an abandoned boat on this waterway. It's unsafe. It affects our environment, and so we're just really happy that these folks have come up with some solutions, and thank you very much, Sheriff.
Hi, my name is John Torringa. I'm a commissioner here in Dunedin, and I'm really pleased about this. I'm really pleased that Sheriff Gualtieri has taken this on as a task, and Commissioner Kathleen Peters has gotten involved in this. This has been an ongoing process and problem for a long time, more than 8 years. We have vessels from here. If you take a boat and you go down to the south side, you'll run into vessels that are there. We don't know whether they're abandoned or not. Here's the main issue. It's a navigal problem. Somebody at night can run into them if they're not properly lit, and oftentimes they are not. And second of all, when they don't have proper propulsion and they can't move. And they can't then move when they need to move, when there's a storm or whatever have you, as evidenced by this, I won't call it a boat, this thing here. This is just really unacceptable for a community that really is concerned about the quality of their water, the quality of the environment, and this is certainly a hazard in that respect. So I'm really pleased. I just really wanted to thank these two here for making this happen today. So that's why I primarily wanted to speak. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
And so we have photos here too of other vessels that are derelict that are part of that 32 that we're going to be removing. And you can see they're really just piles of junk that are sitting in the Intracoastal waterway that are truly a danger. And the ones that are half sunk, maybe 3/4 sunk, etc. And we're really lucky that it hasn't led to somebody being hurt and running into one of these things. And you got kids that are jumping off these walls in cases or swimming in some of these. So it really is a problem. It's a true public safety issue. And we're glad that we're going to be able to do something about it. So does anybody have any questions for me or for the mayor or for the commissioners?
Sure. On the derelict boats, is there going to be fines for the owners? I mean, obviously it costs quite a bit of money to put these boats out of the water and then dispose of them.
Yeah, so we can. The biggest issue I have is getting rid of them, getting them out of here. We've been through a process previously where we were citing people, and that process didn't work. And so as an example, the boat behind us it's registered to somebody at a P.O. box in Bay Pines. We can't even find the person. Don't know anything about them. You know, they're just irresponsible people who bought a boat and then just left it as junk and let somebody else worry about it. And so trying to find these people and go through that effort, because the process we were using didn't yield the results, and going through the criminal court system and trying to get fines, trying to get sanctions, trying to get penalties, and trying to get an order of removal was just a waste of time. So I'm just going to focus on the bottom line and let's get these things out of here and move on. If it costs us a couple bucks to do it, it's worth it for the public.
And why now? Why, is this effort happening now rather than maybe a year ago?
Well, one is that there's a lot more of them than there used to be, and they continue to stack up. And we're getting a lot more citizen complaints, so we're trying to be very responsive to the citizen complaints. We're getting a lot more of them. And now we've also been able to realize that the process that we were using was dragging on too long. So we've had to get creative, and we tried to work around it and do some research and come up with a new process. It's an administrative process that will allow us to do it and to do this more quickly. So it's a combination of things, but I'd say the urgency today is because we have a lot more of them, and the community has just had it. And so we need to be responsive to that, and that's what we're doing.
Well, what do you say to someone who's thinking they've got a boat, it's not doing too well, they may not have the means to dispose of it properly, it's expensive. What do you say to someone that's thinking about doing this?
Well, there's also another thing, another part of the statute I really didn't get into, but you can get into all the technicalities and everything, but there's where it's at risk of being a derelict vessel. So at risk is one step before this, where it's having some issues, it might be taken out of the water, it might be doing some things, and then we can also cite them for having an at-risk derelict vessel. And after 3 citations, we can have it declared a nuisance and we can remove it. So my message to people that are having problems maintaining their boats is get them out of there, work, do something. Don't just leave them sitting out here and don't let them get worse and worse. I understand that people have challenges, and the old saying about how much money goes into a boat, and it's all those things. But look, they took it on to buy it, but they can't just let it become dilapidated. They can't let it sit out here. And if it's on the cusp, is that once we get these boats out of here, the ones that we have for sure identified as being derelict, we're going to start looking at the ones that are next step lower than that and at risk of being derelict, and we're going to start addressing those and start issuing citations. So my message, to answer your question, my message to everybody is get on it and start taking care of your boats, because this is going to stop.
Out of all the boats that were out there, were you able to find any owners? Because I know a lot of times you field the numbers off and just throw it out there like a dump.
So one, actually, of all the ones that we posted, we found one where the person did come forward. And so the process is that we post it. We post it for 21 days, and they're told that they can have a hearing. They can come forward, and if they request a hearing, then we have to hold the hearing within 14 days, and it's before an administrative officer that makes a decision whether we met our burden under the statute. One person came forward and said, yeah, I know, I hear you, I'm going to fix it, and the person did. So that's a good thing. Now, shouldn't have let it get to that place to begin with, but we did have one out of all of these that's come forward.
What's stopping me or anybody else, if you have an old boat that you can't afford to discard, just dump it out in the bay?
That's the problem. Other than it is potentially something you could be criminally charged with. But again, that process is taking so long. The courts are backlogged with COVID backlogs and the courts being shut down, all of the other things that are going on in the criminal justice system. What's stopping you from it is, one, you shouldn't do it. It's illegal, and you're putting people in peril, you're putting people in jeopardy, you're causing a danger to the environment and to public safety. So if you don't want to do it because it's the wrong thing to do, then we're going to take your boat and we're going to destroy it. Now, make no mistake, with all these vessels, is that we're not putting them in storage, we're not keeping them, we're destroying them.
And just to clarify, how many boats will be removed or vessels will be removed this week? And how will they be disposed of? Are they going to landfill?
Yeah, so we hope to have, I hope this week to have about 17 of them done this week is the goal. And they're going to go to solid waste and they're going to be destroyed.
Can you talk about if Florida Fish and Wildlife was a part of this new program that you're talking about, and kind of going forward how they're going to be involved, if at all?
So, I just direct any specific questions you have to FWC, but FWC does engage in this, and we are working with them. We have worked with them. We'll continue to work with them. They have some that they're doing investigations on, especially on the Bay side, so they are involved in it, yes.
Is there a program for people who have boats that are in bad shape to help them get rid of it if they can't afford it?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. You buy a boat, you're responsible for it. Anybody have anything else for me? Yeah, go ahead.
These are the boats that you plan on destroying this week?
Yes, all these boats will be taken out of the water this week and destroyed. Yeah, and others. And you can see with some of these is that they really are a danger. I mean, they're out there in the middle of the water, and look at that one down here in Madeira Beach. It's at least 3/4 submerged. Somebody passing by that, and it's in the middle of the waterway at night. So, no, all of these are going to be priority boats that we're going to get out of the water.
And you said there's a total of 38?
32 total that are at some stage in the process. But we have about 17 that we've identified this week that we should be able to get out this week alone, and the rest are again in some stage in the overall process. And then we're also going to be working on, like I said, those are the priority ones that are definitely derelict, and then we have the others that are sitting out there that are at risk of being derelict, and that's going to be kind of the second tier of this, but not in the too distant future. So anybody that's got a boat that is on the verge, you're having problems with, having issues with, move it on and get it out of here or fix it, because we're going to take action against it. And anybody that's on these illegal liveaboards out there where they're living on the boat, but it doesn't have adequate navigable propulsion. It doesn't mean that you got some, you go over to Walmart, you buy some 5-horsepower motor and you hold it up and say, oh, look, you can't touch me. Yeah, we can and we will. So if you don't get on the right side of it, then we're going to start issuing citations for that.
My last question, who's paying for that for?
So we're using general fund money to do it through a company that we're contracting with here, Divecom, and they charge per foot on the boat. So to give you a 25-foot boat to remove it out of here is costing us about $5,000. But it's worth every penny of it. You think about the public safety issue, the environmental issue, all of the concerns that people have, it's worth every penny of it to get rid of it. Okay? All right, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, you guys want to stay? How are we going to do this? We're